time to sort out my closets. Let's see what we got in here. Let's see.
It's time to play.
Okay, listen, you. You sure as shit have a lot to answer for that Seed of Chucky bullshit you pulled 9 years ago. Hey everyone, it's Movie Lover 120 here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this movie review is going to be for the 6th installment in the horror franchise I am currently reviewing, and that's of course none other than the film that was the first installment of the series to not go to theaters and be direct to video on demand or direct to DVD. Of course, none other than the film that somewhat saved the series for a little while before it went to shit again. That is, of course, none other than 2013's Curse of Chucky. One of the few 6th installments in a horror franchise that's actually good or decent at best. Yeah, so let's get on with the plot. Well, after the shitty events of Seed of Chucky, Nika, a young woman forced to a wheelchair since birth, has to regroup her sister, Barb, and her brother-in-law, in for a funeral after the death of her mother. While dealing with Barb, and along with their 5-year-old daughter Alice, Nika receives an odd package, a creepy doll. After people start showing up dead, the fearless Nika soon suspects that the creepy doll is much more than just a doll. Yeah, it's the plot of the movie. So, how was this movie made? Well, it all started in August 2008, when Don Mancini and David Kirshner spoke of a planned remake at the time of the Chucky franchise, to be written and directed by Mancini. They described their choice of a remake over a sequel as a response to the Will fans who want to see a scary Chucky movie again, to go back to the straightforward horror rather than the horror comedy, because I don't think they really could ever be taken seriously again after the events of Seed. So there's no way fans were going to take this Chucky seriously again after this. They even indicated that Brad Dourif would return as the voice of Chucky. In a subsequent interview, Mancini described the planned remake at the time as a darker and scarier retelling of the original film, but one that, while having new twists and turns, would not stray too far from the original concept. At a 2009 horror convention, Dourif confirmed his role in the remake. At a reunion panel at the Mad Monster Party Horror and Sci-Fi Convention, the cast and crew from the original film confirmed that both the remake and spin-off were in development. Writer Don Mancini and producer David Kirshner worked on a sequel that was titled Revenge of Chucky. So, in a way, the remake at the time was cancelled and changed, thankfully, to another sequel to the original series, one that went back to the horror routes. However, the remake was not cancelled per se, because eventually the remake would go back into production. It would not have Don Mancini's involvement, though, and it would be released in 2019. Yeah. The film, this one, which went into production in September 2012, which I said before, is the first direct-to-video installment of the series. In the US, it premiered on VOD on September 24, 2013, and it was followed by a DVD and Blu-ray disc release on October 8, 2013. And as for critics and fans of this series, critics liked it for a direct-to-DVD released film, while fans enjoyed it decently enough. Me personally, I like it, but not as much as the first two or Bride. Although I like they returned Chucky to his scariest self after the hell of Seed of Chucky, per se. Now let me first say once again, this movie is so much better than Seed of Chucky, like, it's a million times better than Seed of Chucky. It took away all the random pop culture references and brought back the creep factor of a living toy. This isn't to say though, Chucky still does throw a joke or two in there, but they're more so the jokes he did during the Child's Play days than the later ones. Also, I really love the way the animatronics team handled Chucky's moods to make him doll-like again. It aided in making him a scarier figure and reminded us why he used to be something which gave people nightmares. Lastly, I must say this is probably minus one or two things. The best written Chucky adventure. The dialogue and story is written much better than what most horror films have to offer, and while it isn't award worthy, it definitely is good enough to make Curse of Chucky seem like it had more thought put into it than some of the other sequels or remakes of horror films that we had seen around this time. What I find enjoyable about this movie is that it went back to the form of the Child's Play series. What's interesting is that at first it seems like it'll start off as a reboot for a good part of it, and then immediately, out of nowhere, boom, gotcha. This is a sequel. Due to the research that Nika does at some point in the movie that confirms the events of the past films happened and Chucky's scars are still there. Yeah, his scars are still in this movie. That this face, which looks all unstitched, is actually just makeup to cover his scars. To make him look like a normal good guy doll. To hide his appearance. So I'm glad that this movie being that was going to be a requel or a direct sequel to Child's Play 3 and ignore Bride Seed. Well, I wouldn't mind ignoring Seed personally, but ignoring Bride, no. I'm glad they did not ignore Bride or ignore the ending of Child's Play 3, as if he just never got torn apart. And this movie just plays with the idea that only Nika and Alice know the doll is alive. It takes the form a bit to realize it, and Alice being a kid, no one will believe her. This is taking it back more to the slasher roots as well. And now let's get on to the character of Nika. Mancini has written a character, Nika, who is more developed than, in this movie anyways, than one would ever expect to see in this film. We feel for her and importantly feel fear for her. It doesn't hurt that Mancini has an extremely talented lead actress, Fiona Dourif, guys, who, by the way, is Brad Dourif's daughter, playing her. It really makes the film work very well. Mancini isn't just going for cheap titillation with knifing like he did in 2 or 3. There is genuine empathy to be had here. Dourif, like her father Brad, doesn't go for the tongue and cheekiness. It resulted in one of the strongest heroines in a slasher film as well. So, shame it was unfortunately for this one too, because it seemed like we were going to be getting a great new female lead for a slasher movie, but unfortunately, she's only like this for this movie. In Cult, she doesn't really do much. No, she doesn't really have much that badass use in Cult, sadly. And unfortunately, while the reason why this doesn't come close to Bride or the first two is because there are some bad qualities with this movie. Now, we're going to get on to the bad qualities now. The kills were okay. Not really creative or gory enough for my standards. And believe me, guys, I have quite high standards when it comes to the level of gore in a horror film if the film leads on to be. Kind of like with the Evil Dead remake that came out earlier the year this movie came out, which had epic terms of gore. But the deaths in this film weren't really as good. I kind of missed the good old Chucky kills, which were far more intense and creative. Like the first two movies had some pretty creative kills, like the voodoo doll kill in the first one, the teacher death in the second one, the death of Chucky in the second one, the death of Chucky in the third one, or even some of the Bride of Chucky deaths with like the hotel kill, with the waterbed. Yeah, that cheap motel in Bride Chucky, you know? Those 4 had creative kills. Seed had gory kills, but the kills in Seed stunk. The gore did not save Seed from being a piece of shit. Curse, they were just... The storyline was okay. Not much to say, really. Though it was kind of quite flat and boring. However, I did like these whole flashbacks at the end and how to show that the story connects to the rest of the series. And even like how Charles E. Ray was actually a family friend of Nika's father. I like that, and it kind of showed how that whole chase at the beginning of the first film all started. Because Nika's mom actually ratted out Charles E. Ray to the police, but I kind of wish they explained what is a companion Eddie was doing there, what he had to do with the story. I mean, maybe he was like, maybe he was gonna drive Charles E. Ray there to get one of her daughters, like since he was gonna try to do that before until Nika's mom stalled him long enough for the police to find him and kill him. But then, and it's the reason Nika was born in a wheelchair is because Charles Ray stabbed her through her pregnant stomach, and that caused Nika to be born paraplegic. So that was pretty cool, and that was really good. And then it led on to the stock footage of that first film, showing its pure connection to the first film and why Charles Ray got killed by Detective Mike Norris, and how the whole chase happened. And I liked also, they really actually, for once, mentioned Andy Barclay and actually acted like Andy actually existed in this one, because my only kind of nitpick with Bride is that there is one mention of Andy, but the other two before us kind of act like Andy Barclay never even existed. So, and I was kind of hoping they would involve Andy again or any characters from the previous installments, since this was advertised as a direct continuation of Child's Play 3. But I'm glad they at least mentioned him in this movie. There is mention of him, and I'm gonna get to a certain scene later on this review. I would have really liked it better if they had Andy Barclay in the whole movie and some of the others in this film too. But it's a shame. And the performance from the rest of the cast are the biggest weaknesses. The side characters just aren't appealing or fascinating, and it results in a difficulty to place some character to their situation. They're not really that. But some of the family members, like Nika's sister Barb, or Jill, the sitter, or even the husband Ian in some way, really aren't likable characters. You don't really care for these characters. They're just bland characters, and Barb especially is annoying as fuck. Thank God she fucking dies in this movie. I think she's the third family member to die, and she probably gets one of the goriest death in the franchise. And no, not the goriest death in the franchise, the goriest death in the movie. Yeah. The real reason behind being such dull characters is mainly left to the bland writing that was set quite poorly for them. And Brad Dourif is back in our memorable Chucky, but throughout the first half of the movie, they changed the villain's appearance to an unfortunately poor manner for the first half of the movie until they revealed his scars. And of course, final bad quality, the ending. The ending, I feel, was just cluttered together. There were way too many endings in this movie. It's like they couldn't pick an ending which one they could choose. One of them is just pure sequel baiting with a jump scare, and the other is what I feel like the ending should have been. But let's get on with it. Basically how the movie ends, Nika goes to jail, or a mental asylum. She's framed for the murders. Police officer takes Chucky with him in a bag, and when the officer's in the police car, Tiffany sneaks out of nowhere, revealing her presence in the movie, and revealing she's still assisting Chucky in his crimes, despite some of their fights they've had. Slits the officer's throat, somewhat rehashing her first scene of Bride of Chucky, but not entirely. And then she asks Chucky in the bag, who's next? Mail the package, unnamed. They nail it to Alice, and as Chucky pops out, he does the hide the soul chant, the Damballa chant with Alice, and then as the scene's panning away to this door, apparently Chucky put her grandma that she's living with in the basement, and then the grandma just pops up for a cheap done to fucking death jump scare. I really hate this cliche in horror films where almost every single horror movie in this era has to end with a dumb jump scare that isn't even scary. It's just some big bang or some scary face popping out of random nowhere. We've seen this jump scare to death, and it's so annoying how they always do it. God, I hate that fucking cliche in horror movies. There's some that don't end on a jump scare, but almost every single horror movie today just ends on a dumb jump scare, and this is one of them. Ugh. But thankfully, in the unrated version, I would recommend watching the unrated version for this scene, because there was a post-credit scene that takes place 6 months afterwards, where Chucky is now mailed to a dude, and that dude is revealed to be, for photographs, none other than Andy Barclay. He's back in the franchise. Alex Vincent is back in the role. Yeah. So, like, and what I mean is, and this scene should have been the real ending to the franchise. Like, here's how the ending should have went. Here's how I would have done it. A better end to me would have been after Tiffany slits the officer's throat and asks Chucky the Bag who's next, and then after the scene where she just mails the package, the next scene then should be the Andy scene where the text is 6 months later, with the post-credit scene where instead of that lazy soul transfer with the jump scare with the grandma, and it's where Chucky ends up getting randomly mailed. Like, Chucky decided to go after Andy Barclay instead, and as soon as Chucky awakes and finds out that he's in Andy's house, you want to know the first thing Andy does as soon as like Chucky turns his head? It turns out Andy had already anticipated that was Chucky in the box and was already ready for his return. And Andy already is pointing a shotgun at his head the minute Chucky turns his head, and he says, "Play with this," and he shoots him there. And to me, that would have been a better ending because it would have finally put an end to Chucky, finally killing Chucky for good, and that should be the perfect end to the series. Like, Chucky decides to go repossess Andy one more time, so when Tiffany asks who's next, Chucky off-screen decides Andy Barclay. Chucky gets mailed to Andy's house, and when Chucky awakens, it turns out Andy had already anticipated his attack, and so he shoots Chucky in the head, or shoots Chucky in the heart, or whatever, and that's the real ending to the franchise. That would have been perfect ending. Andy even finally got closure in this scene too. His mom got out of the mental hospital, and it seemed like he was doing good. They anticipated Chucky's attack, and he shot him, and he killed him for good. The end. You can close the book on the franchise. That's the perfect ending you can pick. But no. That had to be a post-credits scene. Instead, they had to go with the kid one, so they could just Call It Chucky, which is going to be next, which put the series back into a bad rut again. Because, speaking of that, Call It Chucky would ruin it into bad territory again, which came out, and which would be that movie in 2017. And that's going to be the next review. Man. But anyway, that's it for my review. So my recommendation, this is definitely a film worth watching if you want a recovery from the 1998 to 2004 era of the franchise and want to see Chucky scary again. However, if you're expecting something like The First Year Bride, don't expect something like before because this is a direct-to-DVD film. But anyway, that's it for my review of Curse of Chucky, and if you're wondering how I'm going to rank it, here's how I'm definitely going to rank it. I'm going to give Curse of Chucky a 7.5 out of 10. There we go. That's it for my review of Curse of Chucky. We only got 2 more Chucky movies to go. Unfortunately, like I've already said, next review is going to be for what I call the Last Jedi of the Chucky movies. The new ones. And if you're wondering why I call this one The Last Jedi, you're going to find out in the next review why I think this is the Last Jedi of the franchise. Or the Halloween Resurrection of the franchise. Yeah, so that's going to be awesome to rant on. Because I even hate that sequel. Anyway, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Movie Lover 120.